Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out! Oh my God! We're done.
Yeah? That ain't gonna work for me.
You're done giving me orders. You're under arrest for the murder of Claudia.
Now, we went into episode 7 knowing alliances were about to shift because of what we saw play out in previous episodes. We expected mended relationships in some areas, but explosive conflicts with others, which would then lead to new and unlikely alliances. We also know how power loved to shift power and control from player to player across the board. But what we saw play out in episode 7, arguably the best episode that we've seen on Power Book 4 Force, they really did turn it up a notch. They've started to isolate Tommy's character even more. After the crazy insane moment that we saw between Tommy and Diamond, Tommy is officially out the CBI, but that's not all. He also killed Stacy Marx after she said that she was done. And then she actually found herself done, like done.
Like done. Done.
Stacy Marx is no more, which is something we spoke about earlier in the week around how do you really isolate Tommy's character even more. But there was also the fallout of Janard and Shanti's relationship, Miguel Garcia versus the Marquez Cartel, and you can definitely see what they're now building up to in episode 8 as well, with them reuniting JP, D-Mac, him introducing Genesis, and also Kate's return. It really is all finally poised for the next big death to bring Tommy Egan to his knees. But as always, stick with this video right through to the very end. We're going to go through all the major conversations and talking points for all things Power Book 4 Force Season 3, Episode 7. Now, Episode 7 started with Stacy Marx having a conversation with AUSA Seng. She tells him that Egan needed to be stopped, but all of a sudden you had Bobby DeFranco burst in with a couple of cops with a warrant for Stacy Marx's arrest. She was having a nightmare that Seng found out that she was compromised, and she was being arrested for Claudia Flynn's murder. That should have been the moment that told you the walls are really closing in on Stacy Marx. It's been a hot topic of discussion with how they seem to be stripping away every last bit from Stacy Marx, and just over this past week, we spoke about if you really wanted to isolate Tommy's character even further, you take away the woman that he has within law enforcement. But we are going to come back to round off with Stacy Marx and Tommy in the final chapter of this breakdown. With Tommy, it was business as usual. They continue to run drugs through the Viagra triangle. Shanti mentioned that Elise's mum won't be a problem, she's actually going to be a silent partner, which is what Tommy likes about Shanti, and this is what he respects. Gary Lennon did mention Pride Season 3. She doesn't fill the void of Liliana by any stretch, but he does respect Shanti's hustle. Now, Tommy received 2 messages while he was here. There was an emergency coalition meet, which Shanti couldn't attend to either, and he also received a message from Peter, the leader of the Albanians. Back in episode 6, Vic made a statement by going over to the Albanians who were occupying the Irish bars up north. He made a lot of noise and killed a lot of men because just like Stacy Marx, he was done with Tommy's boot being on his neck. Peter told him that Tommy gave him something that didn't belong to him, and now he needed to make things right. I'm not sure how Peter wasn't actually able to put 2 + 2 together, that Vic was involved because he came in to see him earlier, but Tommy definitely knew it was Vic and the Irish. Now, because of Tommy's meet with Peter, he was late to the meeting with the rest of the coalition, but they took the vote without him. Diamond said they already had the vote, which Tommy rightfully wasn't happy with. But Tommy is someone who does sometimes keep his mouth shut and ears wide open, and this is when he first started to realise he could play on Janard's relationship with Shanti and use it to his advantage. Raheem told Janard that Shanti doesn't mess with fentanyl, and Tommy definitely kept that in mind for later on. Now with Diamond, Tommy was fuming that they made a move behind his back with Madame Wu and the Chinese, because he did have a right to know. Tommy is Diamond's partner, and this doesn't work without trust. Unfortunately, we know the trust between Tommy and Diamond is pretty non-existent. The move that we saw from Janard and Diamond back in episode 6 was Janard's way of getting back on top of CBI's hierarchy because he was done being an errand boy, and it was also Diamond's way of showing that he's still in charge as well, not just Tommy. But again, the moves that they've been making behind each other's backs, most recently also Tommy giving Miguel 500 grand, we always knew this relationship was a ticking time bomb. We also can't underestimate Janard's role as well. He's been constantly whispering in Diamond's ear, he started chuckling in the background, and Tommy definitely knows. He knows how strong a brotherhood can be because of what he went through with Ghost. Eventually he did come around, he knows that the fentanyl deal will make them a lot of money, but what he wasn't cool with was Peter mentioning that someone shot up the Irish bar, and he had an inkling that Vic was going rogue. So he gave Janard a job to do, which was to find out what Vic was up to. And if you guys have noticed, Tommy does kind of give Janard kind of errand boy duties. Pour Che a drink at the end of season 2, go and sit on the Serbs in episode 2, go and speak to Vic and see what he's up to in episode 7, again in episode 7, go drop this bag off to Shanti at the Viagra Triangle clubs. This is what Janard hates and why he pushed back. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this beef and tension between Tommy and Janard is because of the way Tommy treats him, But on the flip side, Tommy does treat him the way he does because of what he's done in the past and who he's shown to be before. You can definitely make arguments for both sides. You can see Janard's perspective of an outsider coming in, which is exactly what Diamond said later on during their fight as well. And you can also see Tommy's perspective. It's something we went through in a lot of detail throughout this season. I even posted over there on X a couple of days ago of how the sentiment in the comment section and across social media do see Janard's point of view as well. Now we then had Janard coming to see Vic. He told him that Tommy knows about him and his leprechauns attacking the Albanians, and that he can't play Tommy. He's not that slick. He gave him the address 299 East Delaware Place, which was Ray's. He knows about Ray not being a hooker. When he walked in on them a couple of episodes ago, he made it look like she was a hooker, but again, someone like Vic, he can never outsmart Tommy. Now Janard told him that he'll buy him some time because it's always a favor for a favor in this world. He will definitely come back to collect. He also mentioned that if Tommy Egan didn't roll into town, they'd be the ones who'd be on top. They'd basically be running Chicago, which I do have to strongly disagree with. I think things would look very different. Things would look different with the Flynn family, and I do think things would look very different with Janard, Diamond, and the rest of CBI. There's no way they would have the coalition that they have at this moment in time, because Tommy was the one who made all of this possible. Tommy was the one who got them one step closer to the connecting Che. If Tommy didn't come to Chicago, Walter Flynn would probably still be in charge of the Flynn organization. Claudia would most likely be doing her own thing with Dahlia. Same thing for Vic. He didn't even want to be in the game to begin with. With CBI, they'd probably be working for someone like the Serbs or Miguel Garcia, just like they were doing at the beginning of season 2. And we all know how Janard couldn't even deal with that. He ended up on heroin, which again, something Tommy did play on when it came to Janard later on. Now Vic knew he had to do something to get Tommy off his back. He knew he had to give him someone, which was Connor. We saw them speaking at Vic's penthouse, how they go way back, how they're brothers, but I guess it really does run in the Flynn's genes to stab people in their backs. Claudia did it back in season 1 and season 2, and Vic definitely is cut from the same cloth. He gave Tommy Connor and said that this is the guy who went rogue, but Tommy did warn him, keep his boys in line, because if there was one more hiccup, he'll be next. Now Vic also mentioned that Ray should be off limits, but we all know nobody's ever off limits when it comes to Tommy. Just like he mentioned to Gabriel back in season 3, he'll wipe an entire family tree if he has to. We also know how family and loved ones can be used to tighten your grip over someone in the world of power, just like Ortega is now targeting Maria. Now speaking of family, there were a couple of moments with Tommy's family. Tommy wasn't involved himself in episode 7, but we had JP coming over to see D-Mac. He gave him the story of when he first came out to his father. It caused a lot of tension between them. He never really accepted JP from that moment on, and because of it, they really did lose a lot of time together. He realized that he was making the same mistake with D-Mac that his dad made with him. He knows that he's already lost a lot of time with D-Mac before, and he didn't want to waste a single second going forward. So he told D-Mac he knows about him being in the streets, and he does accept it. But this warm embrace, this love that we're now seeing, this dinner scene that we saw between JP, D-Mac and Genesis, this stuff in the world of power, honestly it doesn't happen often, and when you do see a happy dinner in the world of power, just know in the next couple of episodes, they are going to definitely tear it apart. Especially with how much love that seems to be in this room with everyone at this moment in time. They're definitely going to bring Tommy to his knees at some point. Now Genesis mentioned that D-Mac spoke about JP all the time. He's a musician. Genesis also mentioned that D-Mac scored over 1400 on his SATs, how he could make something of himself if he went to school, which is something else we spoke about earlier in the week as well. You can tell how much D-Mac really likes Genesis, and JP did tell D-Mac maybe he should actually think about Atlanta. I really do wonder if it is something that D-Mac would consider, but just as he does, just as he decides to go to Atlanta, JP is taken away from him, or Genesis gets taken away, maybe even both. I think we definitely know what they're building up to. It's only a matter of time, it's only a matter of when, not if. We also then saw the return of Kate. D-Mac called Kate not because he was looking for his retro ones, but because he genuinely wanted to speak to Kate. He wanted to apologize for what he said back in season 2. Genesis is definitely having a good effect on him when it comes to family, and you can definitely tell. He's glowing, he's got this smile, he was telling Kate about Genesis, which is why I now wonder whether she's someone who could also get caught in the crossfire, maybe even at the funeral. As I mentioned before, these smiles and happy dinners that we're now seeing in the final stages of Fall Season 3, especially with it being the final season, honestly they're not going to last, that's for sure. So I do wonder if D-Mac does consider actually going to school. He says yeah, but then JP or Genesis' death completely turns everything upside down. Now something else which has completely turned as well is Miguel's relationship with Roberto Ortega. Miguel promised Ortega back in episode 3, 4 and 6 that he will give him Tommy. But we heard about the story involving the Mexican passion flower. It's a calling card for the Marquez cartel. And when Miguel failed to deliver on his promise, we saw the Mexican passion flower being delivered to Miguel Garcia at the end of episode 6 instead. And now he was the target. He told his crew that they needed to get strapped and remain ready for the Marquez cartel. When he was questioned by his guys, he told him that they're coming for the biggest crew in the city, which definitely isn't the Insane Princes, it definitely is the CBI at this moment in time. But the reason wasn't questioned again because he mentioned that they wanted a foothold in Chicago. Now, we've spoken about these hitters in the world of power before. It doesn't matter who you bring in, how much Ortega pays them, they wouldn't even be able to lace Pink Sneakers' boots from back in power. She's the last real hitter that we've seen in the world of power. We saw Miguel Garcia being grabbed and Titus stabbing this guy instead of Miguel, and then running. Honestly, you just have to laugh at these hitters. You have to add Titus in the trash along with the rest of the hitters that have been pretty much a waste of time in the world of power. I'm not sure why he didn't just pull a gun, and again in episode 8 I do think Maria will end up killing Titus as well. Now, Miguel of course wasn't happy. He wanted the green light from Che to go to war with the Marquez, but Che warned him that he doesn't have the men. He doesn't have a coalition like Tommy has with CBI, and besides the point, the last thing Che wants is for the Estrada cartel to get into a war with the Marquez cartel. But I do think it's too late for that. Ortega and Titus's next target is Maria Garcia. Word on the street is that Egan's seeing Maria and she's also pregnant. And as we know, family is never off limits. So we are going to see Titus going for Maria in episode 8, which will no doubt also bring Tommy and Miguel together. Now, speaking of Maria and her pregnancy, in episode 7, we had Tommy and Maria looking at the baby scan picture, Pablo Escobar Egan. Maria also asked him about something he said back in season 2, him not seeing kids in his future, which has obviously changed. But he said what he said because of something that happened back in Power, which he also had a hallucination of back in season 2 as well, Holly Weaver. But Maria definitely has changed that for him. The question of course going forward is, will this time be different? Now let's get into Janard and Shanti's relationship. She's been avoiding Janard because of him making that move with Che back in episode 5. But this is where Tommy got to work with Stir in the Pot. He told Shanti about Janard hooking them up with the fentanyl connect back in episode 6 with Madame Wu and the Chinese, how both brothers left them out the meeting with the vote, which is where Shanti told him that she's the one who got him clean, which was back in season 2. That's something that Tommy didn't know. Janard was a junkie and Diamond knew as well. Of course he was fuming. Tommy definitely had an inkling that something wasn't right, but he never kind of questioned Diamond at the time. He kind of just trusted his partner. Of course, finding out he was fuming that he wasn't told, but he did think about how he now can use it to his advantage. He told Janard to go and drop this bag of product off to Shanti, again treating him like an errand boy. We know how much he hates it, and we know how much he hates Tommy. He even went as far as to telling Tommy that he can't wait to kill him, which we know is not going to happen. I do think it's going to be the opposite. But Tommy decided to play the long game with Janard, get rid of him another way, which was this. Tommy setting him up with one of the strippers, Jade. After he found out that Janard was a drug addict back in season 2, he was going to make him go back to the product, which is something he was thinking of going back to in episode 2. But to make things worse, he went to the back with Jade, where Shanti then walked in. Now honestly, Janard is absolutely crazy. He said that she jumped in from behind, he called it an accident, and honestly he was completely out of his mind. Janard is even crazy for trying to justify it or find an excuse. I mean, you just got caught red-handed and he's talking about it being an accident. I mean, come on. But Shanti was fuming, and rightfully so. Back in season 2, she's the one who pulled him out the gutter. Janard mentioned that she didn't love him and all she was doing was using him to get back in CBI. But I personally don't think so. I do think Shanti did care about Janard as well, because she was there when nobody else was, and you could see how much it hurt Shanti. She smashed his Lambo up, the headlights, the bonnet, the mirrors. You could see it in her eyes. Shanti definitely was hurt. We could see it and Tommy could definitely see it. But again, this is where Shanti reveals something else to Tommy. She warned him to watch his back and his days in CBI were numbered because Janard and Diamond were making moves without him. They even planned to kill D-Mac. They sent him on a suicide mission to attack the 9-7s. That was back in episode 3. They were trying to serve him up to King Kilo by keeping their hands clean. Now Shanti is definitely no saint, we know that, but now that her and Janard are done for good, I do actually see Tommy and Shanti working together. It's something we've also been speaking about over the past few weeks, and ever so slowly, it's now coming together. Tommy and Shanti's interests will start to align. Now after this conversation with Shanti, we all knew where Tommy was heading. He went straight for Diamond, who was also drinking a lot in this episode by the way. He was drinking, acting reckless by asking his connect to the prison to move the fentanyl, which she was actually against. It drops a lot of bodies, and that's actually something that Diamond got done for back in the day. We learned that back in season 1. But Diamond really is moving reckless, no doubt. We then had Tommy come to the barbershop basement and push Diamond, and that's when they got into it. Diamond may be bigger than Tommy, but he was never gonna back down, that's for sure. We had Marshall, Bones, Janard, and D-Mac watching on in the background, and Tommy being slammed through the table. But even though Tommy did stand his ground, Diamond did throw him around. And when they were broken up, Diamond said he was done. Tommy was out of CBI. Now Tommy's response was, he is the coalition. He's the reason why CBI are back on top, which is definitely true, you can't argue against that, but I honestly don't think he'll have a say. You could also see Janard's face in the back. When Diamond was saying he was tired of Tommy thinking he can just walk in and take over Chicago, that's Janard. That's Janard whispering in Diamond's ear over the past couple of episodes. That was definitely Janard talking. But there we have it. Tommy was done. He's out of CBI, he's about to become a lone wolf with D-Mac by his side as his number 2. It does also look like he's going to create an alliance with Shanti, maybe Miguel Garcia as well. Now Tommy definitely had a long night, he just got his ass handed to him by Diamond. Even though he did stand his ground, the last thing he needed was this meet with Stacy Marx. But let's just take it back a second. Now, Stacy Marx did give her speech in front of the media. She mentioned that they managed to capture Claudia Flynn's murderer, and it does send a clear message to both the Marquez cartel and the Estrada cartel. But when she was asked what information led to the arrest, that's something she probably couldn't answer, because we know who gave her the information. It was Pageant Inc., aka Tommy Egan. And AUSA Seng knew it too. He was paid a visit by Shen, Ortega's lawyer, because of a member of the Marquez cartel being arrested, was always going to have blowback, and that was Roberto Ortega's cousin, Gabriel. They knew it wasn't a member of the Marquez cartel. He knew that Stacy Marx was compromised, he questioned her whether she was 100%, that they caught Claudia's murderer, because something didn't feel right. He wasn't convinced, because he knows for a fact it wasn't the Marquez cartel. He mentioned that they needed to take a closer look at Tommy Egan, which was met with a straight bat from Stacy Marx because she was stuck with Tommy's boot on her neck. Tommy had Stacy Marx right where he wanted her. He mentioned that they were just getting started, every case that comes to him, he was going to bring it to her, and you could tell she absolutely hated being in Tommy's back pocket. The moment that he said he owns her in episode 5, you could tell from that moment on with what followed with her sending Claudia to kill Tommy, there was no way she would have lasted the distance being in Tommy's pocket. No way. It definitely does sting Stacy Marx, that's for sure. That's why she then made a move with Maria Garcia. We spoke about it earlier this week of how Stacy Marx really despises Tommy. She hates the fact that she's under his thumb at this moment in time, how she would try and make a move to get out from under Tommy, and the one way you could do that is by gaining leverage over the person that has leverage over you. And as we know in the world of power, family and loved ones can also be used as leverage. So this was Stacy Marx's way. She came to see Maria, she spotted the baby grow in the pregnancy books in the background, and that's what she played on. She tried to get Maria to turn, but she doesn't realize that Maria is someone who's also grown up in this world as well. She's seen and been through it all because she's a Garcia. She's not like Lakeisha who had to take care of Cash, or is she? For a moment it did actually look like it gave Maria something to think about, but I do think she said it herself best in episode 6, she knows nobody would ever protect them like Tommy would. Now throughout episode 7 the clues were beginning to mount up, time was ticking for Stacy Marx. When she gave this interview with the reporter, she mentioned her history at Yale, how she'd always had ambitions of becoming mayor of Chicago, what drove her was the fact that her brother was killed by a stray bullet, and since then all she's ever wanted to do is fight for justice. That's why she was struggling being in Tommy's back pocket. For all the dirty law enforcement officers that we've seen on Power, Stacy Marx did want to try and be by the book. Even though we saw the move from her in episode 5 by sending Claudia to try and kill Tommy, she is someone who tried to stay by the book, and she only tried to fight fire with fire. But that's why she was struggling to work for Tommy, even if it came at the expense of her being mayor of Chicago. She then came clean to Bobby DeFranco, she told him that she was compromised, and she really was on the verge of breaking down. First it was the nightmare at the start of the episode, and now this. Tommy really did get into her head, because that's what Tommy does. Once he gets into your head, he definitely does stay there. Now she mentioned that she'll handle it herself, she didn't want Bobby involved, and then she set the meet with Tommy. Now Tommy already had a pretty rough evening by the time he got here. We saw him limping over because, let's be real, he did get absolutely smashed through that table by Diamond. But with Stacy Marx, she told him that she was done. He could leak whatever information he wanted to in the media and the press. She mentioned that she may get a slap on the wrist, she may not become mayor of Chicago, she doesn't care anymore. She's got people within law enforcement that will back her either way. And when she made a move to arrest Tommy for Claudia Flynn's murder, it was lights out for Stacy Marx. Once she stopped doing what Tommy said, she was useless, and we know Tommy's never afraid of killing a cop. Back in Power it was always Ghost who was against the idea, but now this is about to have huge consequences. Tommy has just killed the US Attorney of Chicago, someone who is now front-running the polls for becoming the next mayor of Chicago. We spoke about it earlier in the week of how it would bring Bobby DeFranco into the frame. He'll know Tommy had something to do with it because of the conversation he just had with Stacy Marx. but we also spoke about how it would isolate Tommy even more by being thrown out of CBI as well as losing his inside woman inside law enforcement. Well, now we're here. Tommy is officially a lone wolf, and he's going to be up against it like never before, going into the home stretch. It really is going to be a wild ride, because something else is definitely going to bring him to his knees. But that's a wrap for All Things Episode 7, another great episode which was written by Lamonte Edwards and directed by Gary Lennon himself. Definitely the best episode that they produced so far in Power Book 4 Force. So with that being said, drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.